All right. We're coming to you from the Cuckoo Club in Bandra. What a fucking awesome place this is, Peter.
I'm in love with this place. We're going to do this more often from here.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll try and work out something where, like, I didn't know how cool of a place this was because we can actually host gigs here.
You heard that first, yeah.
Horns Up Live.
Yeah, so if that sounds like a great idea to you, just hit us up. And all the bands, I know you're going to hit us up first, but we want to hear from the audience first. Who's going to show up to Bandra, a nice, cozy place?
Which is next to fucking Candies.
Yeah.
So that means there's food when you want, and if you come late, then that means you get food at half price.
That's even better, right?
That's even better, right? Cheap ass fucking place.
So, I think we're a little ahead of ourselves here with
drawing imaginary killers.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure in a gig-starved place like Bombay at this point, especially when it comes to metal and rock.
Yeah, and who fucking needs backline anymore? Just plug directly into whatever you want. DIs.
Dude, imagine
watching Sutej Singh here.
Imagine acoustic doom, dude.
Acoustic doom. Ancient wisdom with 2 V's instead of a W. I bet you didn't expect that reference.
Nope.
But I love that band, man. Anyways, we digress. And, by the way, if you guys want to reach out to us, it's HornsUpPod at... we are on what? Twitter.
Yeah. Gmail.
What's your Twitter?
I'm at Trend Crusher.
I'm at Asmo Annie. And we're getting this out of the way because we actually, in a very long time, have the guest with us who's hearing all this gibberish and thinking what the fuck he's doing here.
And why he showed up on a rainy Saturday morning.
Yeah, it's like Bombay is absolutely drowned out again.
I'm telling you, this is perfect doom weather. I already have my doom playlist ready.
And it's so weird, right? Because one of his early names used to be Water. I'm sure he's heard so much of that joke that now he doesn't even laugh at it.
So, for you, those of you who didn't get the reference,
it's Hydrodjent.
Yeah, we're sitting here with the man himself, the guy who sat in his bedroom, called himself Hydrodjent, and had jaws dropping, I think, of a lot of people around the world.
Yeah, he was the Ben Sharp of the Indian scene. Can we call you the Ben Sharp of the Indian scene? By the way, we are all talking to Keshav.
You guys are way too kind. Thank you.
No, but how many times have you been called the Ben Sharp of the Indian scene?
That's actually the first time I've ever heard that. But that
really?
Is, yeah.
Okay, how many times have you been called cloud kicker of the Indian scene?
I don't think I've ever been called that, which is mind-blowing because I see in many ways, like obviously, but like that's a massive compliment because Ben has been one of my lifelong inspirations. In fact, like when I was thinking of the name, because I had to change the name of my project from that very absurd name that it was. And the name I picked, the simplest way to do these things is to just, take a couple of references or like, things that inspire you or whatever and like sort of club them together. And I always wanted one word because, cloud kicker is it's like a portmanteau, right? Like you've got two words and you combine them into one. And so some of these, my favorite artists like Cloud Kicker, Ocean Size, and I was like, well, I'm going to just combine the two. So I was like, Skyharbor became Cloud Kicker and Ocean Size. Like it's my tribute to those two bands that are like probably like the two single biggest influences on me till date. So yeah,
dude,
there's a reference to Cloud Kicker in the name.
Get into like Skyharbor. Mm-hmm. Do you have a Hydrodjent story, Animesh? Because I have one.
Share yours first.
Man, I still remember. So I didn't even live in India. And
you lived in Dubai, was it?
Yeah. I think that's when we first connected.
Right. Yeah.
But that was the thing. Like I was, and for those of you who've been listening to this podcast for a while, I keep making reference to this. I was like an outsider. I had like an outsider's view of the metal scene. And I still remember this was one of the things. And I had a few friends who were also Indian into metal and stuff. So I really knew that a band was a big hit the moment these guys also came and told me, hey, have you heard this band? And I still remember, I think it was probably on SoundClick or stuff like that. I heard
SoundClick was where I first
and I think it was also on RSJ primarily how I had heard.
The forums?
Yeah, the forums. That's how I kind of knew. We knew.
News.com.
Yeah.
OG.
I was...
That was where...
Let's get our handles out of the way for that. Like, what were you? You were Trend Crusher.
Yeah, I was Trend Crusher.
I was Machine Head.
Oh, you were Machine Head?
I was Machine Head,
Oh,
yeah,
fuck.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I was, I think I was Asmodeus or Asmo, one of the two.
You were Asmo.
Yeah, I was Asmo.
You were Asmo,
Yeah.
yes.
But I still remember one of these guys coming up to me and being like, dude, have you heard this guy Hydrodjent? Oh, have you heard this band Hydrodjent? And I was like, correction, it's not a band, it's one single person. And they were like, oh, it's one guy. And I was like, yeah. And like that's a time where you kind of have that chip on your shoulder. Oh yeah, I've heard his music first. And that's how I've always felt, because you had that whole buzz about Hydrodjent first. And then the moment like Skyharbor happened, and it's been great, like since we've known each other for almost a decade now, just seeing that whole evolution of things. So what is your Hydrodjent story?
My Hydrodjent story. Fuck, we should let Keshav talk, no?
No,
Why
go
are we
on.
fucking
Guys,
yapping on and on and on?
You're doing absolutely fine.
No, I remember what was it? What Dots?
Yeah.
Dots and Order 66.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dots and Order 66. Was that the other song title?
That was on the GIR.
As in,
The first two singles you put out.
no, the first song that I ever put out was it was Treus, that was the first song I made. Interesting story about that one. So, I mean, I was into the whole idea of getting into this whole home recording DIY thing, and the reason why, I mean, I take this and run with it, right? Yeah. So where all of this kind of began was like I was, like you said, like an outsider sort of looking in, because I wasn't in like one of the. I mean, I'm from Delhi, but at that point in time, I was in Manipal, which is a student town in the middle of fucking nowhere, and it's all students and stuff, and so by all accounts, it should be like a hub for original rock and heavy music. But as it turns out, it wasn't really. I mean, there were plenty of bands, but I think what happened was I sort of in my nerdy way was scouring the internet, and I just happened to as I was getting more into this home recording thing, like I stumbled across this very very nascent sort of niche or subgenre or whatever you want to call it, which wasn't even a subgenre at the time. It was just a bunch of these guys doing like pioneering this whole thing, because as a student you have no money, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, all right, well, I have this, and I'm like, I need to somehow get the best results I can out of like a crappy old PC, a pair of headphones, and like a Pod XT, right? And I was like, all right, well, so I went on the internet, and like at that time, this is when forums, like you said, forums were still very much a thing. Of course, I think they've sort of died a natural death with the advent of social media. But so I was on all these forums, Harmony Central, Gear Sluts, blah blah blah, and I came across this guy with the username Tesseract, and there was no band called Tesseract at the time. It was it was again like Ackle in his house, making his little demos, and then I came across a guy called Bulb, and at the same time, I mean, I also came across Zoran, who is like our like he's yeah.
I must add, it's so strange to hear Ackle,
Misha,
and Zoran all in the same statement. But that was the same
those
time.
three were actually, they used to talk a lot, the three of them. Like they were very they were communicating a lot. I mean, of course, in the days of forums, all of this is like public conversation, right? So there was a lot of back and forth going on between the three of them, and a few others also. There was John Brown at that time, John and Ackle and Fell Silent. There was Paul Ortiz, who became Chim Spanner. So like all these guys, I was like very much like, I came a little later onto the picture, but these guys were all chatting and like exchanging, ideas and tips and tricks and stuff. And I was reading and lurking and, just fascinated by all of this, because I was like, every little bit of, nugget of information there was like, yes, new hack discovered, like cut 4.5K with a blah 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 this sharp Q, and suddenly you lose all the fizz in your guitar. I'm like, oh my god, like I've just unlocked the key to tone. Oh man, fuck, we were such nerds. So Zoran was, of course, he's, I would like to say, one of our own, and it felt so good to see. And of course, I think all of us were fans of his brother, and Warren and Zero, of course, were one of the pioneering rock bands. But when I remember hearing Zoran's demos, and I was just like, this is fucking incredible. And this is in the Orkut days, so I pinged him, and just on the off chance, I might just get a reply, and I was just like, hey, I asked him some technical question about one of his demos, and he just replied back with way more information than I thought he would give me. We corresponded a bit, and the next thing I know, he's coming. He has, he's becoming more and more like known, and then he came to Delhi to produce a band, Them Clones. He came to Delhi to record their album. He ended up staying at my house.
Mm-hmm.
And in our downtime,
we were just talking about Them Clones in the morning.
Really?
Yeah. Seriously.
Crazy, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the downtime from working on that album, when we were at mine, like, I was like, listen, I've got these riffs lying around. Can you just like help me put them together? Like help me make a song out of it. And we did that. And he basically helped me produce. I mean, pretty much like did the chunk of it himself. And helped me arrange that song, helped me write the, like structure it together, and that's what became Treyas. Like, so that was like, so already, like I had a very unfair sort of head start over everyone else, because I was just like, I have this guy, who's...
Yeah, but there must have been something about your, whatever you sent him or whatever conversation you had with him that piqued his interest, right? Otherwise...
No, for sure. But, it's crazy how, these things all sort of fall into place. What were the odds of that happening, right? Like him not just coming to Delhi, staying at my place, and us hitting it off, not just as professionals, but also as friends. We got along so well, and just the fact that suddenly I have my first ever single that I've put out, like even if it's still in like relatively demo form, it wasn't on the album, but like an instrumental demo is of such high standard, right?
Yeah.
Because like I had this person who's such an expert at what he does, helping me with it, and suddenly I realized, I knew at the time that, okay, right at the beginning, I've set the bar like really high. And this is, of course, like I'm very, very, very conscious of the fact that, it's not because of me, it's because I've had like a lot of really, really good help. But I recognize that now that I've set the bar high, and he's not going to be around every single time to, just like, sort me out every single time, with mixing and blah, blah, blah. So that, I think, made it very clear to me that all right, I need to match up to my own shit, and then Dots happened, and then or whatever, those other songs happened.
Yeah, and I still remember listening, because I think it was probably on the forums where Machine Head uploaded, saying, hey guys, and there was like a specific area of the forums also where people would say like, hey, I recorded this, review
check out
it
my
and
band
stuff
types,
like that.
yeah.
And I still remember, promote your band.
Was it that?
Probably something.
There was
like
also like a recording section.
Yeah, recording section.
Like a gear section.
And I think
the gear section,
just listening to that, I mean, of course, it's very easy now, 10 years later, to say, yeah, we knew it was the next big thing. I don't think anybody who listened to it, I'm sure
Least
you
of all
also,
me,
would have realized where it had all kind of spiraled into and
of
reached
course
at
not.
this point.
Yeah,
but you knew that, this was something recorded by someone you knew, even though it was like over a forum that you knew him. This was standing up to the rest of the stuff that you're learning. And let's put it into context also, the metal that was being released that time. This is like, no one had even freaking heard or even used the term gent at that time.
I think, that's a very interesting point that you bring up. And I think that's also part of the reason why it became as, success, of course, is a relative term, but like as well known as it eventually did is because, this is a controversial thing, but like I do believe that luck plays a huge
That's
part.
exactly what I was going to actually ask you. Like, naysayers will hear this story and say, bro, this happened because you were in the right place at the right time and the universe conspired to make it happen, right? But they don't see the amount of effort that it takes to even reach that stage.
Sure.
And after that, for all, like, you yourself said it, you set your bar at such a high point. It must be eating you up कि boss अभी मैं अगला चीज क्या कर सकता हूँ. Like, what's the next step from there?
Weirdly enough, I don't know. I don't think so. I think I was just having way too much fun, doing what I was doing. Also, I did get a little, again, luck, as it turns out, again, because we are in the digital age and because recording became digital and, now you could have things like templates and you could, have, so what I asked Zoran very nicely is like, that first session that you did for me, can I have a copy of that so I can make a template out of it and study it, and, break it down and like understand exactly how it's all been set up. And And so already like I have a way bigger head start than anyone else. Like not only have I had like a single like produced for me at a very high standard, I also have a free masterclass in how to mix right there in front of me for my own song. So I was just like, this is insane, and like you said about the naysayers, that's true. But I feel like, look, hard work is, of course, there's no substitute for it. But I do feel like pretty much everyone does that. I mean, it's not that's just like a basic prerequisite that you have to just take for granted. Like, I mean, without that, nothing is going to happen anyway. Like if you don't work hard, success will never come to you. I mean, it may, but it'll be very fleeting. It won't be sustainable. But I think there's a combination of hard work and, like you said, being in the right place at the right time that I think really sort of takes something from not just being good, but being good and also successful in terms of outreach and blah, blah, blah. And it just so happened that, this thing became a subgenre of itself, and, it became, the latest, what do you say, flavor of the month. Yeah. And I think we sort of caught on to the tail end of that, because I was also very much, like I was trying to be a perfectionist and, perfect the album and make sure that it was as good as it possibly could be. And by the time it came out, the first one, I think this whole thing had taken off, like the peripheries and the Tesseract.
Yeah, by then I think, and that
it was in full flow at that point. Yeah.
I think by then even Periphery at that point, I still remember listening to their first album. They also worked so much on it, and then plus getting their lineup put together was such a
groundbreaking band. Like they've.
But let's dwell just on Blinding White Noise for a bit, because for me it's personal, because I still remember listening to Dots for the first time on a CD that came with the RSJ. And man, I don't think we can spend like multiple episodes talking about Amit Sehgal and now what a pioneer he was in the Indian music scene. Yeah. But just listening to it from, a clip that I heard on, the RSJ forums to now a CD, and then actually holding Blinding White Noise in my hand or getting that album in there, it seemed like a lot happened. But tell me, like from your perspective, you talked at least about Dots. Where did you kind of realize, or what was it, to get that album out? At which point? Because I still remember, and I'm going to make reference to an old interview we did years ago.
I was actually watching it like a few months ago.
Yeah, for those of you who can like find it on YouTube. And I still remember you were talking about at that time,
B69, no?
Yeah, B69, where you were talking about giving the album out for free. So where did it kind of change for you in terms of, I know we're going to talk, I'm going to make reference to turning points, but how did things change for you at that point?
Again, I this is a difficult admission for me to make, but I have never particularly been a hustler, in life. Like I'm not really the kind of guy to go out and like really, like put myself out there. I think by nature I'm a slightly reticent, kind of like a slightly shy individual. Like, I'm not particularly fond of, thrusting myself into the limelight and stuff like that. So as it turns out, like again, I got lucky, because a lot of the opportunities that came were not because of me going and seeking them out. It was the other way around. I had sorry, what was the question again?
So the
what was it? How did the thing?
Yeah, how did it turn from
all of that into this?
From something which was just on forums to Skyharbor, and then you're like now definitely in history, you will go down as, or Skyharbor will go down as one of the bands from India that made it big.
You had Daniel Tompkins singing on your album.
Yeah, man. You know what I mean. Like, see, all of this stuff, you can't count on these things happening, right? You can't and I was personally like, I was a little. I'm like I said, I'm a shy sort of character, and like I was very kind of starstruck by all these people, So like I would definitely not have been the kind of guy to like reach out to, say, someone like a Tompkins and be like, yo, do you want to sing over my stuff? Like that imposter syndrome within me was also very real, like, theek hai na, I mean, I'm doing cool stuff, I'm having a lot of fun, but like it's nowhere near the level of these cats. So yeah, like, this was in the MySpace days, and I think it was good that we all had these accounts, because again, I got a message from him online saying that, singing in Tesseract, but I'm looking for collaborations to do, just for fun, because I'm trying to branch out and, do stuff besides my main band. And I was like, what is going on? Like, this is okay.
Yeah, because
great.
At this point, Tesseract was blowing up. Yeah, it was blowing up.
I don't know if they were in that, the trajectory was very much.
They were clearly the band that you talked about if we were talking about that sound.
Yeah.
That album had just been released. They were getting offers from. They were starting to headline.
This is
places.
I think this was pre the release of One, but it was when that Concealing Fate EP, which of course is like their definitive work. Yeah. So like I said, again, these things just fell into place. The whole Marty Friedman thing happened completely randomly, and I think that added a lot of weight. I mean, even though like his contribution by itself was it's a couple of guitar solos, but just that association, it gives a lot of validation. Okay, someone of this with this background and this pedigree is sort of.
Yeah, and it also helps you get noticed, man. Like immediately when you hear of Marty Friedman collaborating with an Indian bedroom producer,
you'll be like, I want to see what this is all about. Yeah. I want to hear it. And then
I think that helped a lot with discovery, because
hugely.
I still remember from going back to my earlier statement of people who I knew in college who also listened to metal talking about it. Here there were a lot more people, and for all of us who were back on the forum back then, this was our guy. Like, we know this, and there was a lot of pride we took in that we knew this, we've seen how this is blown up. And I'm going to step forward a little more, but for me, another moment which is really great, and I think you might remember this well, is the N87 Weekender, when you went live as a 3-piece.
Yeah.
For me, as somebody who's been observing your career in the band for a while, that for me was a huge turning point.
It was, no doubt.
Because you went from being a bedroom producer, somebody playing your guitar, recording clips, to now a live band.
Yeah.
And that was like, of course, I don't know.
With those musicians.
Yeah, with those musicians.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the story of Anoop, but I remember meeting Anoop, and Anoop, I think, had flown like 20 hours or something just to play that gig.
That doesn't happen. That sort of shit doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, so even at the time, I remember thinking, dude, this is completely unprecedented. And there is no way to plan for these things. So you know what? I'm just going to go with the flow. And man, like, it's, the universe is clearly, has a plan in mind. So I'm not going to stop working hard, but like, I can't plan for these outlandish things to happen, where you can have a drummer who not just is an insane drummer, but like it just so happens that he can fly standby because his mom was a senior United Airlines official.
Oh, wow.
So he could fly standby, which means he didn't have to pay for a ticket.
Oh my God, this is
he would have to pay for like stowaway seats.
Basically that. Yeah. So it's
absolutely ridiculously base fare.
Yeah. So you're just like, it's, like pieces are just falling into place. Like all these boxes are just being ticked like crazy, right? How am I supposed to afford a plane ticket for someone, like,
wow.
So like I said, all these things are just falling into place. Then the label scene, and I think that, of course, when a label first expressed interest, and it happened to be Basic, and Basic was again like working with these.
Yeah.
They had identified this is like the niche that we want to sort of grow, and I think hearing from them suddenly made me think, oh fuck, all right. Actually, no, sorry, my bad. This was again, man, and I feel really grateful that I've had so many like well wishers and people who have just felt that this has some worth or whatever, because like my friend Akib Wani, who was the head designer at RSJ at the time, so RSJ was obviously all constantly in touch with these labels around the world, and because they would keep featuring their bands on their compilations.
I think Basic did a few of their artists, Tesseract and stuff like
and
that.
Fell Silent, I
Fell
think.
Silent,
Yeah. And this is how I think Akib reached out to Bali, who was who ran Basic Records, saying that because they'd been corresponding for a bit, and I remember he sending out that email, and I think CCing me in it. I can't remember, but he sent out an email to them asking, would you be interested in signing an Indian band? This is their MySpace, whatever URL. And the reply came back saying that, yeah, actually I've been keeping an eye on him for a bit now. And it's interesting stuff, but I'd like to, hear from him as to what plans he has for the music first. And then we started chatting, and then at this point, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to wing it, because that Weekender had just the offer had just come. You know, so it's like, okay, there's a chance to take this live. Anup was going to be playing drums, so I'm like, okay, I have like a really solid sort of rhythm section, you know, there, which means that one can build on this down the line. So I was like, you know what, dude? Yeah, my plan is, there was no plan, but I was like, my plan is that, you know, I would love to, you know, be touring or like performing a little more regularly in the next, say, 6 to 12 months. And from there, who knows? But yeah, you know, the plan is definitely put this album out, you know, and like put some work behind it. And I'm just winging it at this point, you know, being like, let's see what happens. And he was like, all right, well, cool. You know, we'll get this contract drawn up, and, you know, we'll, you know, let me know if you have any questions about this agreement. And then, you know, we can announce the signing like in a couple of weeks. I'm like, fuck. Because like we discussed, the plan at this point was still very much to put the record out for free. Yeah. Not just that, it had been announced that it was going to go out for free. I had already printed a whole bunch of CDs. And I had, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I had uploaded the album to Bandcamp as well, just not made it public.
Wow.
With a release date. And it had anyway been delayed because, I mean, you know, a lot of people were asking, you know, when is it coming? When is it coming?
I'm pretty sure I was one of those guys bugging you.
Yeah. I mean, like, I loved it. Don't get me wrong. It's like, fuck, you know, this feels great. People really want it. But then I, you know, announced the delay. And because, you know, this was like, it was literally a matter of days, I think. Oh, yeah. I had planned to release it at NH7.
Yeah.
That November 20 or something like that.
2011.
Something like that?
Yeah,
something like that?
No, it was
20th or 2011. But this is like the last week of November.
Of November. Yeah, something like that. 26th of November. Something like that it was. Yeah. I remember like, yeah, that was supposed to be the release day. And this conversation is happening just a couple of days before the show. So I'm like, bro, actually, ye plan tha. He's like, well, I mean, you can go ahead and do that if you want, but, you know, then obviously, like, we can't work this out. And I'm like, shit. Okay, decisions. What do we do? Do we pull the plug on this at the last minute? And of course, yeah, I mean, I did, because it was like, it's not such a big deal. Yeah, people want to wait, they can wait. And plus it'll, you know, have a much greater outreach if we sign. And then that happened. And that, of course, was a big turning point, because now not only is it that I have the well-wishers and, you know, like friends and all the good vibes on my side, but there's also like the industry which has gotten involved. And from there it was just like, you know, it just started snowballing, I think, because then that first show happened, and on the basis of that first show, again, dude, you can't make this shit up, right? You can't legislate for these things to happen. The Lamb of God show.
Yeah, another
right?
turning point.
Yeah, what the fuck was that, right? And that again was a thing where that was actually way bigger of a turning point than I think some people may realize, because when Chris reached out, and again, like, Chris reached out, I'm just saying this so casually, you know, like, no big deal.
Beta hua yaar.
हाँ यार है यार वो अपना हाँ वे भोंसड़ी के डबल बेस ठीक से नहीं बजा रहा तू.
Fuck, the guy is not even in Lamb of God anymore.
Yeah, he's not. Fuck, man, that broke my heart. But
yeah, it did us too.
है ना?
Yeah.
But so when he reached out, so actually he reached out saying that he had started a label and he wanted to sign my project to it. That's how that conversation first happened. Like, it was over SoundCloud. He had this handle called Eagle Adler, which I didn't connect at first, and I was like, I ignored it, because I was like, you know, I'm already talking to like a label. Then he sent a follow-up message, and he signed off as like Chris Adler, chris@lambofgod.com. I was like, oh. Ma ki choot. Fuck. Then I replied, I was like, listen, man, I'm really sorry. You know, like, I've already got this agreement in place. But, you know, it would be like an absolute honor if one day we could share the stage, blah, blah, blah. I will keep you posted on my progress, and maybe down the line we can work together. I was like, dude, absolutely. You know, and if we ever come to India, then I'll keep you in mind. So then I told Bali about this, that, you know, he's there, he's aware, you know, like that's a good contact to have. So the moment Lamb of God announced that they were doing a world tour and India was one of the stops, Bali reached out to Chris back again and said that, you know, would you want these guys? And Chris reached out again back saying, yes. You know, we need them. Like, I want these kids to be the main support. And you can have your opening acts or whatever, but we want them, like, to be, you know, play before. So when this happened, suddenly now I reached out to Tompkins, to Dan, saying, yo, like, you know, Lamb of God have asked us to be direct support. Yeah. And then I think that made him also think that, all right, this could be more than just like a studio collaboration or whatever. Like there's something here. Then he agreed to do that show. And he was like, that would be a good show to do because, you're guaranteed 8 to 10,000 people.
Oh yeah. And that was a big show.
It was a massive, it's still possibly one of the biggest shows we've ever played.
Wow.
Till date. Yeah. Very few shows have come close to that, just in terms of the sheer number of people and how wild that gig was. We've played wild shows, don't get me wrong, like especially in Bangalore, like that city has been so good to us. But that day was like, it was ridiculous. But yeah, so, and then on the basis of that Lamb of God show, again, associations, then Euroblast Festival were like, oh, you're doing all of this stuff, why don't you come over to Germany? And then, it's, these things just sort of, it's like a chain reaction, right? It just keeps going. So
yeah, and one of the things was great just to see you playing bigger and bigger stages now.
Yeah.
Like now, I think you've probably played more shows in like certain European cities than you've played Bangalore or Bombay.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even the States for that matter now.
Yeah.
We've done so many US tours at this point. Yeah. There are certain venues where you walk in and you're like, ha. That smell of that dressing room. Oh yeah, this is the venue with that shitty catering. They'll only give you cold, frozen microwave pasta for lunch. But yeah, it's crazy.
But a lot has changed, since the days we're talking now. I mean, the band has kind of changed. You've got I wouldn't say new singer because he's already been on the album and he's been with you for a while.
4 years now, yeah.
4 years. I still remember.
That's longer than Dan was in the band.
Yeah, and I still remember.
It's the second version.
Yeah.
It is version 2.0.
Yeah.
And just seeing like him, and I think we saw him live before. The only thing he played, he recorded was, I think, his audition probably that he had. So for a lot of us, like watching Eric's first show I can't believe I'm saying Eric, like, yeah, he's my homeboy.
Dude, he is, yeah.
But watching his first show in Bombay, because there wasn't a lot of material.
In Bombay? Was 26?
No, I think.
Bombay 2016? Antisocial?
Yeah, Antisocial.
Yeah, right.
I still remember.
Yeah.
And it was a packed crowd. So there was like,
crowd.
a lot of people coming in.
Yep.
Who's this new guy? Is he going to kind of match up and stuff like that?
I think that was our first ever Bombay show, actually. We played Pune a bunch of times, but we never played in Bombay.
Yeah. So, and it was great just to see how he kind of fit, because for a lot of time you all played one side of Blinding White Lights, and now you all played the chaos side with him and just his...
That was his idea.
Wow.
It was his idea. He was like, yo, you got to break out some of these riffs again. And I was like, sure. Yeah.
So it was nice just to see that
totally
side of there. But like, how's the whole evolution been? I mean, you had Aditya come on drums, you had Eric. How did that kind of change the band, or where did that?
I think, we were talking about this earlier, when we were upstairs at the cafe, how there are no shortcuts and you have to pay your dues. And I think in hindsight, of course, one can realize these things. There was definitely a period where, we were flying high, like there's all these opportunities, and suddenly you feel like, you've leapfrogged your way up, because that Lamb of God show happened. And not that I felt, I'm till this day, like I very much try and keep my feet on the ground at all times. But, we were built above the BMs and, all these other bands. And these guys have been playing like for donkey's years, right? Like they're way more experienced as a live act than we were. That was like our first show as a full lineup with singer, and second ever show in our lives. And we suddenly like build, as main support and, above all of these. And it felt a little weird to me, but at the same time, there was so much stuff going on. I was like, dude, I'll just roll with it, man. Like there's all this killer shit, and there's Euroblast and this, because it was still new and it was still fresh, and, everyone wanted like a piece of it. Then, once the novelty wore off, then it's like, all right, they're not really new anymore. They've been around for a bit. And then suddenly all these exclusives started drying up, like a Euroblast would not pay for us to go to Germany, have an all expenses paid vacation basically, and get to also play some music to a bunch of, crazy German fuckers and come back. So that these things started drying up, So it was like, now you're just another band on the circuit, and, you've got to slog it the same way you like everyone else does, because that's how it works. Yeah. And I think this realization was very sobering, because it was like, okay, cool. We've gotten a very nice leg up. But now you've got to work for it, we're not going to have everything spoon fed to us, all the time. And I think these, what it involved, because up until that point, everything was like very scattered, it's like one show here, one show there, a festival here, festival there, high paying, whatever, well, not high paying, but definitely all expenses paid, you're not losing money on these things. And which is why I think, Dan, Anup, all of these guys were still able to do it, because there was never any question of it being like a career band. I mean, we might have wanted to, but it was also like, dude, this is logistically so impossible. So let's just have fun doing it, as long as, it's not too much of a stress. And then we realized that, well, if we're going to make it in this industry, then you have to pay your dues, and you have to, you have to grind it out and work your way up the ladder, because I mean, we're not flavor of the month anymore, and again, even if you are flavor of the month, that's very fleeting. That comes and it will go, and then again you have to work. There's no substitute for the work. And then this realization that it was going to have a lot of time put into it, a lot of work, and a lot of investment also, financially, logistically, time, all of these things would have to go. And I think that was very hard for some of these guys to do, because they also had other projects. And in Anoop's case, I think he was with Intervals at the time, which, I mean, of course, that whole thing was quite a mess, and it unfolded very poorly for him. He got very unlucky there. But that was the one band at the time. I remember having this conversation with him where he was like, dude, I want to play drums. I just want to be playing drums. And this band is giving me the opportunity to do that. And I would love to do it with Skyharbor, but we can't, because Dan won't do it, And Dan also couldn't do it. He's like, he's got responsibilities, and the band is not about to start turning a profit anytime soon. And, he's got a wife and he's got a kid on the way. So it's like, and these are things which I can't even relate to, because I'm like in my, mid-20s, and I don't have any such responsibilities. Again, privilege, like we here are very privileged. We grew up in our parents' house. We don't have to pay rent. We don't really have to worry about a damn thing. They have to pay the bills.
And it's hustle, basically.
It's hustle. You have to be hustling, so the way I would treat a tour as, an expensive vacation, like he can't afford to do that. So it was like, okay, I can take out, say, 2 weeks at a stretch here, there, and make it work, like somehow, like, lose the income for that bit, but make it work. But I can't, do like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, like these month-long runs, which you have to do. There's just no working around, because if you go out for a 2-week tour, you're going to lose even more money. The only way you really like recoup your money is if you play more and more and more and more shows, so that all, eventually sort of, or comes close to.
Yeah.
So there was a huge conflict there. Dan couldn't tour. Anup wanted to tour. Anup left first because he was like, dude, my other band is giving me the opportunity to do what I want, which is play drums. And so I was like, dude, I can't fucking stop you from doing that, because it's also then unfair to tell him that, oh, we've got this happening, and you cancel all your other shit and make this work, which on paper it should be, like whatever, whoever gets booked first. But that's the one that's allowing him to pursue his career, being a career musician. Like career touring drummer, and whereas this is going to be like a fun thing, so if there's ever a conflict, then he has to prioritize that. Similar with Dan as well. Like if there is ever a conflict, he has to prioritize the other thing. So both of them ended up leaving, so it was, I mean, and at this point, the question was, what do we do? Do we just pack it up? Because we've had a great run, right? Like it's been a lot of fun. We've achieved all of these things. We've played Download, like we've opened for our favorite bands, we've many bucket list things have been ticked off. So either you stop or, and there was very much like that question was there, like, do we just, call time on it and just do other things in life? It's not like we'll stop making music by ourselves. But yeah, then we decided, no, man, like this unit has a lot more to offer. And, well, the musical core of it is still the same, because, Anup didn't really write the music. Dan wrote just, he was the singer. So it was Dev, I and Krishna, and we were the core of it. So we were like, man, we have a lot more to do. We've got, we have all these ideas. And so, yeah, then we decided, let's do it with friends, guys who are really, who don't really have that kind of responsibility with other projects, and who can afford to, make this their main squeeze. So then we got Aditya on board, and then and then we were just asking around actually as far as the singer thing goes, because this was a very difficult thing for me, because I've seen the history of bands that lose Dan as a singer, and it's not good. Not good. Whether it be Piano, that was his first band, he couldn't continue with them because of time, fell apart. First Signs of Frost fell apart. Tesseract lost Dan, and then they went through like a fucking revolving door of singers. Like they changed every 6 months or something like that. Released like one little EP with each new singer until they were like, fuck it, yaar, tu wapis aaja. Yeah. So I was like, the history is not encouraging. Yeah. How do we do this? And so we were like, do we make it public and call for auditions? But again, my nature is like not to do these things. Like I just want to quietly get on with it and make the music. Like tamasha nahi karna. So then we asked around our friends, and I asked Forrester, who had again another bucket list. We got him to mix Guiding Lights. He's the producer for Carnival and the Aussie prog scene for folks who don't know. Right, so I asked him, do you know anyone who might be interested? Because location is clearly no barrier. So, can you, anyone in Australia who might be interested? And he was like, no, I don't know. But I do know this one American dude who I've seen like putting up some covers of, DLC and Carnival and stuff. And, why not just ask him if he's... so then we sent Eric a message, and the next thing he's like, he replies within hours. And we're on tour at this point. We're on the last leg of shows with Dan ever that's ever going to happen, and like Dan is in the room with us, and we're like, fuck, okay, how do we do this, and he's also like helping us out. He's screening everything that we do, and he's like, you guys should consider him, consider that, don't consider him, blah blah blah. It was like there was no like awkwardness there. He wanted the best for us, and he was trying to make it as smooth as possible. Then Eric replied back within hours being like, yeah, sure man, I'm down, what do you want me to do? I was like, okay, can you record an audition and send it? And he did that again within a few hours, and we're like, guys, I think we're good. It was hard though, because from then on, suddenly now it became like the glamour is gone, like all of that stuff is gone, like the time of shit falling into your lap is over. Now it's the time to hustle, and now when you need people to help you, industry guys, you need managers, you need booking, you need agents, because now you're just one of many, right? Because that gent thing is now, by this point it's plateaued, and it's also fading out.
Now everyone's progressive.
Yeah, so
no, I don't think anyone uses gent anymore.
Yeah, but, it's all prog, right?
You kind of brought me into a great segue, which is now, since you put out Sunshine Dust last year, how would you compare like the whole expectation, or at least forget the expectations, recording and writing that album versus Guiding Lights, not even going to Blinding White ones, but just the comparison? How different was it? Of course, complete different personnel, but the core remaining the same.
You mean like in terms of the music, or in terms of the experience of just making it?
Both, if you could.
I think so. I think if it's not obvious enough by this point, we will never. Every album is going to be very different from each other. It's just because I think with every body of work, we put so much of ourselves into it that by the time it's done with one body of work, you're spent. It's like speaking in a particular language, right? And it's like, I'm burned out. Like you can't write like that again. It's like, I've poured all of my energy into expressing this sentiment, and it's done, and it's beautiful, and it's amazing, and I'm so proud of it, but I can't do it again. Maybe I'll come back to it like later, many years down the line, but for now I've said all that I needed to say. I've expressed all that I wanted to express in this vein, or in this, in this aesthetic. I can't find the right word, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Which is why then it's like, all right, cool.
Saturated your...
Yeah, completely, dude. So by the time
the space that you were in at that point.
Oh yeah. So by the time Guiding Lights was done, it was like, fuck, dude. Like, I mean, we love doing the whole long format song thing, but no way can we do that again. Like, it's like we want to do the opposite. Like, what still gets us excited? Because if we had tried to do that again, it would have felt like work. Now you have to match up to this, and you have to create something that's like that but better. And if you're thinking about it that way, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, and listeners can feel
the
authenticity of it, man.
Totally. If you're faking it, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. If you're trying too hard, to like recreate something. I mean, we all know that. As fans of music, we can tell immediately when something sounds uninspired or contrived. Yeah. We know. So I was like, "Wo to nahi karna," So then we're like, okay, let's dig deep and see what still exciting. this is where, you listen to different music also. You're exposed to different music all the time. So, you're like, all right, cool. This is cool. Let's see if we can channel ourselves through, and express these different things. So suddenly it's like, all right, cool. We've written like these 9-minute long songs. How about we try and write, shorter ones? How about we try and, focus more on hooks as opposed to, like these massive passages of sound, because that was now exciting. It was like, we've not done this before. Why? It's a challenge. It'll be fun. So that's how Sunshine Dust became a thing, because it was what was exciting us at the time. It wasn't like the easy way out. Trust me. Like, a lot of friends have told me, like, to my face that, I didn't like that last album. You're trying to be something that you're not. I'm like, you have no idea, like what it feels like when you've said something and you've said it to the point where you need to find something new to like keep it, or else it's like you stop. If it were a case of like, we need to do Guiding Lights Part 2, I would have rather just been like, guys, let's just not do it. We've done Part 1. It was insane. Like, there's no way we can replicate that again. So enjoy. Those songs are still there for people who want to hear them.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a point that most people don't get.
They don't.
Hey, if
you want to listen to that, it's there.
Just listen to it.
Exactly. It's right there.
That's what I tell anyone who wants to listen, who says new Metallica sucks.
There's old Metallica. Go. It's
listen to those first albums.
Yeah. What's wrong with you?
But on to the next thing. I mean, coming to the music part. If you look at the album, top to the end, you have, Dim. You have which was
your single? Yeah. Dim was the first official single. The second one? Yeah. I think Descent.
Yeah. So when you look at Dim versus Descent, you have like, there's a huge, and those two, I mean, essentially were the singles that you put out.
Yeah.
Leaving the songs that were released before the album. There was such a contrast in that. So you're just wondering, where is Skyharbor going with this? Are they going back to new metal-ish with Descent?
Dude, totally, man.
Yeah. And then when you listen to the album on a whole, it kind of makes sense there.
It does, right?
It kind of flows in.
It does, right? Yeah. I mean, when you release them as singles, you can be like, "Whoa, yeah, where is this coming from?"
And I think that's we've discussed this, where a lot of times bands are putting out singles, but context. Already people are like, "Wait, this is your
judgment." Yeah, decreed.
So like the first time when you put out Dim, and it was like, "Oh yeah, they're coming back."
Yeah.
Descent, what's going on?
Okay, fuck,
should I even listen to the album?
Yeah.
So what was it like, just kind of like, because it's a very different sonic template if you think about it. I mean, it's light years ahead of where Blinding White Noise was, and then again Guiding Lights. So what was the kind of stuff that pushed you? I know you wanted to do shorter songs, you said.
I think the single biggest factor is on Guiding Lights, well, the music was essentially written by the three of us. And on this one, it was everyone. Because, man, like, I can be honest about this. Like, I don't have the batteries in me to write like a full-length Skyharbor record entirely on my own. I mean, I can, but like, it would be very daunting, and I would probably want to take like 7-8 years over it, to really dig deep and find that inspiration. Because I'm a bit of this one that way, like, I want it to be pure, and I want it to really be inspired. Like, there shouldn't be like an uninspired moment on it, which is why it was like, dude, let's just all make the music, and we all got along really well. So it was like, well, you bring what you have to the table, and we run it through this filter, and we see what comes out the other end. So there was Eric, and Descent happened because Eric was like, yo man, like, I mean, so I'm listening to Blinding White Noise, and there's a lot of these slightly new metal-y grooves, and I was like, dude, oh my god, yes, because I grew up in that era, like, I mean, I'm a 90s kid, I mean, I grew up listening to Alice in Chains. Alice in Chains was like, still is like, my jam, so like thick, like heavy, dense atmosphere.
Is Alice in Chains metal or not?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Chickened
out. Easy way out.
Previous
episode. Easy way out. Easy answer. Yeah. So, I was like, yeah, why am I ashamed of that? Because it's cool to be ashamed of, being a fan of new metal. Fuck that. Like, I mean, I've been doing this for too long to, worry about such ridiculous things anymore. So come on. He was like, yeah, why don't you just write a song like that? Just have some fun, make some riffs again. Because I think with the whole Guiding Lights thing, interestingly, when we put that album out, we got a lot of flack from people saying that where are the riffs? You know, like the metal has gone and now it's all this very vanilla sort of like floaty, dreamy, blah, blah, blah. So that's what, now you can never really please everyone. So at that time there were people bitching about that, and now people are bitching that, you know, like it's lost its the beauty and the, you know, the emotion and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, fuck man, like, you know, I'm just doing what pleases me at a particular time. And when Eric suggested to me, he's like, dude, why don't you bust out a couple of riffs? I was like, yeah, I haven't done that in a while. This could be fun. And then I just picked up the guitar, and the next thing you know, that happened, right? And he's like, dude, this is amazing. Let's make a song out of it. It may or may not make the album, but let's do it, because it'll be a fun song regardless. So we made it, and so all 5 of us, you know, well, we were writing parts, contributing, and like, because now all 5 have recording setups and, you know, have like the ability to sort of, you know, do this, which wasn't always the case earlier. So now it's like the songs are just taking shape, you know, with 5 different sources of input. So obviously it will be a lot more varied and a lot more, well, bipolar, if you will. And then what we did at the end of it, because there were 5 heads together, is we needed the producer, you know, the external producer, which is like, acha dekho, aisa hai, you know. We could do it ourselves, and we did, and we scrapped it. You know, we had a version of the album ready to go, which again, you know, like the first one was going to be released on NH7. The second, this one was our self-produced version of it, was going to be released when we went on tour with the Deftones in 2017.
Wow, so that's when it was.
It was ready. It was ready. All I had to do was upload it.
Wow.
It was done. Like, I had mixed it, I'd produced it, like everything was ready. And then at the last minute we got cold feet and we're like, guys, you know, like, are we sure, is this the best version of it that it can possibly be? Because we're all saturated, right? It's one thing if like I have like the control of it, so I make the decisions and blah, blah, blah. But when you're fighting 5 different opinions and it all comes to me and I'm supposed to sort of make sense of it, but at the same time, I'm also one of the 5. So I have no objectivity, right?
Yeah, you're just too close to it.
Too close. And at this point, I'm making decisions without knowing what the fuck I'm doing, which was a very disconcerting thing for me, because as a producer, the one thing I value above everything else is objectivity. I need to be able to zoom out and think for the song, not think for this part or that part.
Yeah.
So that was when we were like, okay. And then as it happened, our label with the basic contract was up. You know, we delivered the 2 albums that we owed them. And we had new management who were like, well, you know, let's sign you to a bigger label. One thing that I am very grateful to them for is they sent us to Australia, and they were like, you know, work with Fori and like be in the studio, live in the studio for a month and like, you know, make the album the old school way. Like how Metallica made the Black Album. You live in the studio for a month. Your only agenda is you wake up, you make the music, you go to sleep thinking about the music, you wake up, back at it again for a month, right? So it's got, yeah, you know, so you have
watching those like clips that you guys were putting up on Instagram was a lot of fun.
Dude, it was, man. Like that's one experience that I will always treasure for the rest of my life. I mean, we're feeling the repercussions of it now because it was such an expensive thing to do, and we weren't spending the money. The label was, but the label needs their money back.
Yeah. Let's now that we talked so much about Sunshine Dust.
Yeah.
A year later, any song you want us to play from it, like, and any reason why
on the podcast?
Yeah.
From Sunshine Dust? Yeah. Man, you know what? It's weird. Like, so after it was done, I couldn't listen to it for a while, obviously, like for a good while, because I was still like being like, oh, is it nice? Is it nice? Oh, this thing needs to be louder. Oh, that layer is there. Oh, the snare. But now I was listening back to it a little while ago because, and I really like it, man. There's some good shit in there. There are some songs which are weaker than others. But that goes for every album by any artist ever. But on the whole, I'm pretty proud of it. You know, like it's not something that I think is not up to standard. If anything else, like in many ways, it's of the highest standard that we've done, especially sonically. And some of the songs are great, man. Like I really like Blindside. I think Blindside is a great song. I wrote that song from start to finish. The music. That was like, I think the one song on the album which was like where I did all the music, like by.
Yeah, like compared to like I remember the singles you'll put out on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
Chemical
Hands was again like, you know, we took it to the studio and Fori listened to it and he was like, it's okay, but you know, it's very random. And, you know, it's cool. I like the experimental blah, blah, blah. But like, you know, let's just try and, you know, like identify some key parts and sort of build the song around that and like add more riffs. instead of, because that tempo, he was like, this tempo is really great for you to like really go, balls out with, and it was cool and experimental, and all these, fuzzy bass lines and sound effects and stuff is happening. But he was like, you need to put some riffs in. And I liked this, because we've gotten used to the idea of being this band that started out as playing, really riffy, like writing riffs that made people's jaws drop, right? I mean, that's what
That was dots. That was strayers.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like a riff where you're just like, because I'm a fan of that. Like I remember, Sixth and, early Bulb, and like these riffs were just like, yeah,
That, I think if I can say, that was my like peak aggression days.
Dude,
where you
same, man.
Listening to like Sixth for the first time, you're like, what the
Dude,
hell?
it scares you, right?
Yeah.
I was scared. I remember the first time I heard Sixth, and I was literally like, whoa, like it frightened me. Like those were
I still couldn't believe that they pull it off live.
effortlessly. Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. That was my first exposure to Sixth live, and I still couldn't believe that it was happening, and it was a near
You're talking about Big
copy
69?
rendition of this thing, man. Of the
that
album
was actually
live.
That was actually one of their worst shows in terms of the tightness.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how good they are? And for me as a viewer, it was fucking incredible.
Yeah.
And I only know that it was one of their worst shows in terms of, because they spoke about it, and I spoke to Weller about it, and Weller was like, we were all jet lagged, we were pissed off, it was this, it was that, sound was, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, it's like standards, man, standards. You look at it and you're like, that shit doesn't come easy.
But let's get to a song from Sunshine Dust.
I think Menace.
Right.
I really like Menace.
Why?
Actually, Menace and Temptress is supposed to be one long song. That's one decision on the album that I'm not happy about, that they split it up into two. It was supposed to be one big one.
Can we then play it out as the way it was?
Please. Because when we play it live, we always like just
All right.
play
So,
them together.
Guys, here's Menace and Temptress, the way it was supposed
The
to
way
be.
it was meant to be.
Alright.
Yeah.
back here with Keshav. Keshav, 4 months in Bombay. How much do you hate the city, especially with the last 2 months of flooding that we've gone through?
The only thing I'm really a little bewildered about is like, man, how do I stop all my clothes from fucking catching mold? Yeah. I opened my almirah today morning to, pull out some pants because I was like, I've been wearing these pants for the past like week and a half and, like they're a little dirty and all. And I pull out my other pair of pants and it's covered in fucking fungus. What is this?
But
I need to stock up on that Absorbia, yeah.
Dehumidifiers.
Yeah. Dude, but that shit is expensive, huh? Like I was checking it out on Amazon, 25 grand a pop. You kidding me?
Old school mothballs.
Yeah.
but we've been in our last episode were a couple of episodes earlier we were talking about like the Bombay hardcore scene and how suddenly there's like this micro movement of
this
sorts.
Resurgence of sorts.
Yeah. And that's the same thing I remember feeling about years ago listening to like bands from Delhi. Like that aggression, that balls out aggression could only come from a place like that.
You think so?
I mean, Undying Ink is a prime example. For me, again, I remember listening to, and we know that you had a hand in that album, Aggressive World Dynasty.
Oh, yeah.
Man, listening to that album in the train,
shit,
was like, you could feel it. And that, but then again,
it was pissed off. Yeah.
Pissed off as hell. You feel that thing. And that's the same thing. My first question, since you're now a recent native of Bombay, do you see a kind of difference in like just the scenes? Yes.
Essentially, we're asking you, Delhi scene acha hai ya Bombay scene acha hai? Forum pe war ho jayega.
I don't know. I don't think there is a scene in Delhi anymore. I mean, there is. No doubt there are bands. But, bro, actually, you know what? I'm lying. There are bands, great bands everywhere. But I think like venues are... The infrastructure is now equally fucked in both cities, I feel like. So, they're both equally bad.
But where do you see like... I mean, of course, you talked about Zoran and the sound that there.
Yeah.
Is like you moving to Bombay going to have a different sound on Skyharbor, for example?
No, definitely not. I don't think that. No, I'm too far gone to like have things like this. You never know. Never say never. But you know what? I did feel at a point that there was a sound to the scene from both cities. Like Delhi had like a slightly. I don't know really how to describe it, but Delhi was a little more frantic, a little more like, there's that aggression, like you said, and Bombay had like it was pretty savage too, but there was this little tongue-in-cheek sort of vibe to a lot of the Bombay bands, and your Scribes and your BMs and
and that's why you see the peers also. I mean, if you compare Delhi's Undying Ink, and I think Circus were also around at that time and stuff like that.
Yeah,
you had Demonic Resurrection, Scribe, Bhayanak Moth.
That way, man, I actually feel like, if I have to be completely honest, I don't really think either city has really developed like its own signature. It's certainly not like, a Seattle, for example, where you're like, okay, this is the sound of this city. Because they're both too diverse.
And face it, man, it's not as if rock music is our first choice of expression of music at the end of the day.
Certainly
if
not
you
English.
were to, definitely. No. I mean,
if anything, the sound of Bombay has now become defined by the gully boy and the hip hop.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. And the sound of Delhi for me has always been good old fashioned Punjabi music.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
I completely agree with you.
Okay, but anyways, let's move on. Yeah. Sorry, Delhi scene.
It's an interesting thing because it just goes to show how universal, what a universal language the rock and metal thing is. Like,
of course, yeah.
Everywhere you go, you will find it, But then again, I think we're still a while away from taking that and like sort of making something really distinctive about it, which is shaped by our surroundings. I don't think we're there yet.
Okay, so here's the next question. Completely jumping fields. When you work as a producer. How many people come up to you and say, Keshav, give me your sound? And then how do you deal with that? Because as a producer, you have to do what's objectively right. And it may not just be what the band actually wants to hear.
This used to be the case earlier on for sure. I got quite a lot of it. And And I have to admit, at that point of time, because I was still, you know, when you don't really know all that much, when you're not that clued in on, you know, on your skill set, you know, I mean, you're good at like maybe a small little mic, your zone. You're really good inside your zone, but you're a little afraid, I think, to step out of it. Not because you don't want to experiment, but because it's like you don't want to disappoint your client, right? So you're like, you would rather do this and do it well than, you know, like take a risk and whatever. So I do feel like earlier on I did make the mistake of maybe accepting that, not accepting it, but like, just being like, okay, cool, I'll give you, you know, the same sound, which of course you can't really, because this, you know, it's sounds versus, you know,
performance also. And
I think there's a difference between sonics and a sound.
Of course, like if everyone can replicate Slash's guitar tone, that doesn't make you Slash.
Exactly. Also, you can't, man. It's like, you know, you take Warren's rig and you take his Strat and you try and play through it, you're not going to sound like, you'll sound like ass.
No, because I remember one of the things...
or Dimebag for that matter.
One of the things I
sound
remember...
like razor blades.
And I was doing research on, I realized that post Blinding White Noise, you became the go-to producer in India. Everyone kind of...
for sure, along
like
with
everyone kind of was
in
coming
the rock and metal space, maybe, true.
Everyone was coming. I mean, I remember listening to a lot of albums and they were like, a lot of them took the same thing what you did, where they said, oh, we're produced by Keshav Dhar now. We're produced by Keshav Dhar.
Man,
mixed by Keshav Dhar.
I don't know whether... I think that's actually been more of a bad thing than a good thing. It might have been a good thing, like in the moment, because suddenly I'm just like, whoa, you know, I'm getting all this attention. Everyone wants to sound like me. Cool. But the way it works against you is that, you know, anyone who eventually, of course, will want to, you know, do something different, and they, you know, they're like, okay, let's see what this person's done, and they check out the catalog, and it's like everything sounds very, very similar. So it's like you sort of get pigeonholed. And that's completely okay if your scene is thriving enough that, you know, you can sustain yourself based on that. Like, for example, let's say someone like a Joey Sturgis, or, you know, like a Machine, or these guys, you know, who are in the deathcore scene, for example. There's so many bands, so many artists for them that they can hone in on that sound, perfect it, their sound, and that's it. Like, you know, people go to them for that sound, and that's fine. Kurt Ballou, exactly. Best example, right? Kurt Ballou. Like, you can't imagine him doing anything other than what he does.
Yeah, it becomes a headline if he does anything else.
But in my case, because we're in India, and because, well, you know, I don't know, I felt like that did kind of work against me, because and I was also, at some level, I did want to work with other acts. I wanted to work with singer-songwriters. I wanted to work with, you know, slightly with non-metal acts. I even wanted to work with electronic acts, as purely from a, you know, producing point of view, because I'm fascinated by music, you know, and I'm fascinated by sounds, and I just love I loved the idea of like delving into each of them, and each different one just gets me more excited, because like, oh, here's something new, you know, so I can learn something which I can then apply to something else. But that's not going to happen if you're being pigeonholed, and, you know, so like all the singer-songwriters decide to go somewhere else because they're like, you know, ye to matlab he's going to make me sound like a metal band.
The metal guy. It's the metal guy.
Which I think I got lucky, because there did come again, turning points. Talking of turning points, there was a band called Jester from Delhi.
Chandigarh?
No, Delhi.
Okay.
My very, very good friend Pranav Pava, unbelievable guitar player, incredible. He was the main writer in that band, and they were a rock band, but like kind of like it was weird. There was a lot of electronica in there. There was a lot of blues in there. There was a lot of jazz, and there was a bit of a Frankenstein's monster. Like, very interesting album though, but the sound they wanted was like not, you know, metal or anything like that. And I was very grateful, because I was like, okay, here's the chance where someone's giving me the opportunity to not only do their record, but like do it not, you know, how it's been done. And he was like, you know, you take your time, and we'll find the sound. You know, we're not in a hurry for you to, you know, give us what you know. And I found that very liberating. And on the basis of that, you know, he introduced me to Kamakshi Khanna, who is now, of course, one of my best friends. But she was a singer-songwriter, you know, was also looking for a producer. And I think, like, you know, these, again, word of mouth say it's like, oh, you know, this guy doesn't just do that one thing. So and I think more and more, like, people across genres have now started realizing that, okay, cool, this guy is, you know, he's a bit more than just the metal guy.
Is Bombay keeping you happy?
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, there are certain things to be said. It's more, besides just the work, I think one definitely needs to step out of the city where you've, grown up your entire life and you've been staring at the same walls, the same house. I mean, parents' house, like, again, after a point, you need to step out to, to just grow as people, to, grow as professionals also, but just to, it's very important for us to put ourselves out of our comfort zone.
Just take the leap, basically. And
yeah, what's the worst thing that can happen? Yeah, like, we're privileged enough to the point where nothing will go wrong. We'll survive. Worst case, we always have our fallback option. We'll go crying back home to, mummy, papa, and be like, galti kar li. But
they'll be gracious enough to say, "Aa jao beta."
Aa jao beta. Like, that's what. So I think, yeah, like Bombay that way has been, the pace of the city is like much quicker than Delhi. I really appreciate that. Like, I realized one thing. I like deadlines. I like crazy deadlines because it forces me to really think on my feet
and get creative
within limited time periods. So you have to you have to think, okay, well, I have 6 hours to deliver this mix, which means, and I'm starting from scratch. Okay, so I'm gonna, all right, cool. So I have 2 hours to do this much, and after that, I'm gonna stop doing that. I'm gonna move on to the next thing.
You find your work style.
You do. You really do.
Yeah.
You become way more efficient at it. Otherwise, you can spend 2 days just tweaking your kick drum.
Obviously, because it's so subjective at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And objectivity is like I said, it's your biggest asset. That's what people are paying you for, more than just your ability to tweak knobs.
Yeah.
It's your ability to make decisions for the song, which you can't if you have heard it too many times.
Yes.
There's another reason why I don't like producing and mixing. Like, if I'm producing something, I prefer to not mix it. If I'm mixing something, I prefer to just do that, just because I don't want to spend too many hours with a project. Otherwise, by the time you get to the mixing stage and where you've been sitting and listening to these guys do take after take after take after take after take for weeks, and you're sick of it before you even start,
I think
putting any EQs
for those
on
listening to the podcast and have heard the last one, you'll hear something similar in both producers.
Was that Vishal?
No, it was Dan Swano.
Right. Yeah, exactly, man.
He hated mixing. Tracking, right, yeah. Because he had already thought of the mixing.
Yeah, I mean, and I do feel like I'm better when I think on my feet. Like, I run out of objectivity very fast. Like, I get saturated very quickly. So I like to make snap decisions.
Okay, cool. So I know we've been talking for more than an hour now. You've got places to be.
Jesus.
Yeah, you've got places to be. Traveling out, venturing out. Yeah, into Bombay. So let's start wrapping it up.
Sure, we can wrap up.
First wrap-up question. How many kids do you get coming up to you and going like, Keshav uncle, mujhe bhi Skyharbor ki tarah banna hai. And when that happens, do you just break it down to them and paint them, here's the reality of it? Or do you tell these kids, okay, you obviously, like, do you tell them in a nicer manner? What is that advice?
See, I mean, here's what I can say is, I can only talk based on my own experience. But I will break it down. But at the same time, I don't want to crush anyone's hearts and, be like, this is fucked and, it's going to be miserable for you. But I will say that just do it for the reason why you started doing it, because it's fun and because you love doing it. And if you organically get to a point where enough people are interested in what you're doing, not just interested in what you're doing, but interested to the point where they are willing to put money behind it, that's when you can maybe consider treating it as, like a side thing. And then eventually, start considering it as maybe like a full-time career. Because there's nothing worse than jumping headlong into something which you love, having it, bear the responsibility of having to pay your bills and then resenting it because it isn't.
Of course. And it's only going to get tougher because technology is now so easily doable that anybody can fucking make it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is the reason why your big studios are shutting down around the world. This is the reason why your big time producers, and I will name no names, but this is the reason why some of these guys are basically bitter old fucks.
No, but I mean, I hope this.
And they sit all day and they just complain and bitch about the fact that this kid in his bedroom with a MacBook is calling himself a producer. I'm like, bhonsadi ke, I can do what you're doing, but that's the thing. There's always someone snapping at your heels. So you have to keep reinventing yourself. And if you don't, it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. It matters. You're only as good as your last piece of work, right? So
and
never.
I think it's for any job.
Yeah.
I think that's the same thing. It's the same thing with any creative field, with advertising, film, sound.
Yeah.
But it's been great just to kind of, and refreshing to hear, because you have a lot of people who have their stars and looking at the stars and saying that, wow, this is where, or a lot of people who probably have been following you for a while saying, Keshav has kind of made it, but it's not been an easy journey.
I don't think I've made it at all. If anything, like having moved here, you realize just how, you may be like a king in your bedroom, but when it comes to actually like having the respect of professionals, like, who are seasoned professionals, who've been doing this for a long time, and people who are really versatile. And I really admire versatility, man. Like, I mean, it's great to be like an absolute champion at the one thing that you do, but I have a lot of respect for people who are, who have many facets to music.
And our final question to you, and so you've just announced a tour with Monuments across the US, and you toured with them at Progfest in Australia.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to meeting John and the rest of the guys? How's it been?
Those guys are savage, man. I love them to pieces, but oh my God, like they have like an energy level that I wish I had. They're great, man. Like they, it feels really good that they, when they were thinking of support bands to call out, that they called us out, to be like, will you come and be main support? Like that was a very good feeling. Even because we've been a little quiet after the debacle of the European cancellation, which of course left us like $9 to $10K in the hole, which we haven't spoken about, but it's, kids, this is how it works,
Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah.
It's expensive, and if shit goes wrong, it goes really, really, really wrong, so it feels, it'll be good. I think it's going to be good, a lot of fun. Most tours have generally been it's like it's a professional sort of thing, you're working, but here I think it'll be like, everyone can sort of let their hair down.
I'm jealous of everyone in the States who gets to see a lineup like this, man. Guys, Monuments guys, if you're listening, hey, we're here in India. We also want to see you guys.
Most of Skyharbor now is in Bombay.
Actually, that's not true, man. Like in 2 weeks, I'm going to be the only one in India anymore.
What?
Yeah. Krishna is leaving in a couple of weeks. He's going to go to college in California.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys know this, but Anup is back in the band.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not like a full-time touring member. Like he's, but we have established that, we're going to write and, make albums with him. But so that's 1, 2, Dave and Eric are already in LA. So that just leaves me on my lonesome. But
so you have an American Indo band.
Indo band. Yeah,
we've gone from Indo-American to now American Indo.
American Indo. Correct. Absolutely.
Keshav, as always, it's a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me on this.
Do you want to plug anything? Do you like putting yourself out there? Do you hustle
nothing
now?
that I do, but like, man, like we were talking about this earlier, but about how Bangladesh and Pakistan and stuff, and like how there's some thriving scenes going on there. Everyone should check out this metal band from Lahore called Takatak. Yeah.
Fuck, that's an awesome name,
dude. I'm working on their record right now, dude. They are
thrash metal,
right? They're like a strange Frankenstein of everything. There's like bits of animals as leaders in there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They've got like all the thumpy, like the slapping guitar scenes going on.
We're gonna check these.
And they have vocals
like
now
the
too.
Seinfeld bass lines. completely took that out. No, but what I meant was, how can people find you online?
On me, I'm on Instagram, Keshav Dhar. I try and not be too much on social media these days, but like, you can find me there. I'm always, available if anyone is, just wants to chat or wants to work together. Like I'm around. I'm working on quite a lot of music, and I go through these cycles where when I'm in release mode, then it's like, oh my God, one thing after another is just coming out, and then you're performing it. But then I go quiet for periods of time where it seems like I'm not doing anything, but I'm actually like working on a lot of like music behind and getting it ready to that point. So that process can take a year or more. So I'm in that space right now where
that's good.
There's 3 albums being worked on simultaneously. There's Skyharbor album being worked on, new one. Number 4, there is a White Moth album being worked on. There's a No Honey album being worked on. Yeah.
Dad didn't mention that on our show when he came in.
Yeah.
And what's the third one?
I have a project with my friends Suyash and Abhilasha called No Honey, which is like it's a little eclectic sort of electro pop thing, which was a lot of fun. Again, I just like having fun with sounds. So yeah, working on just writing music, getting back to doing it for the fun of it.
Yeah, so awesome. There's a lot to look forward to in the coming year. So, all right, man.
Thank you guys, and thank you everyone who's listening.
Hi.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.
He's actually the first one ever to thank our listeners because we don't do that shit.
Follow us on Instagram.
Yeah.
Fuck that shit.
Fuck
We're
you
not
guys.
even on Instagram.
You all suck.
Anyways, see you guys. On up.
Cheers.